All right, welcome to Political Voice on VOP TV. My name is Moses Humphrey. Now, it's often said that a teacher's reward is in heaven, but a Nigerian writer, Tayo Oke, has argued that any time a teacher has to say that, it's not born out of conviction, but rather out of resignation. And he said it is more an admission of defeat and helplessness than a statement of truth. Well, he also said it is actually a form of sarcasm overlaid by dry humor. Oh well, today on the show, we want to take a closer look at the move by the nation's House of Representatives to increase the salaries of teachers, to have them receive the same pay as those in highly paid sectors such as the Nigerian Maritime Authority or the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, amongst others. Now, this, they say, will help to boost their morale. The debate as to why teachers earn so little despite giving so much is almost as old as time itself. But today, it takes the form of a proposition by the House of Reps seeking to increase how much they take home at the end of the month. Well, my guest on the show today is Charles Ideho, who is a public affairs analyst, joining us virtually, of course.
Okay, thank you very much for having me.
All right, great. So now let's look at, let's start off by getting one thing off the table. And this is, possibility, or is it just a matter of raising teachers' hopes without any real hope of achieving anything with it? Giving teachers the same salary as what we see in other sectors like the oil sector. Do you see this happening?
Well, I think it's an exercise in futility because if you look at even the parameters on ground, you know that these House of Rep members, they ought to know that it is driving through a route that has no base. And I say that based on the fact that the teachers as well, profession is on a concurrent list, it's even on the residual list as we speak. So they mentioned Central Bank is on the exclusive list. They mentioned oil workers is on the exclusive list, and such other profession they mentioned, they are all on the exclusive list. The teacher profession is on the concurrent and the residual list. I wouldn't know why the House of Rep want to legislate over a section of society that is on the concurrent and on the residual list. You understand? But if it has to do with what the federal government alone can legislate upon, that's understandable. And you say that journalists, that the government is UJ to fix a salary of journalists. I mean, you do know that the journalism profession is also on both on both on the concurrent and the residual, even on the hands of the private. So for me, I think the House of Rep committee did that. I think they started in 2021. No, 2019 actually. 2019. So basically, I think it's just an exercise futility. Maybe they just want to be seen as doing their constitutional duty. But outside that, I think nothing is going to come out of it at all.
Wow, this is a blow. It's a blow, and the blunt manner with which you just dropped that. But really, let's look at it. Teachers have over time complained about poor pay, and in fact, it has gotten to a point where some states had to start doing examination for teachers to determine who is capable enough to hold the position that they hold. Some states have had to lay some teachers off because they didn't pass the test. Some of them could not even speak English properly. In the northern part of Nigeria, some teachers were recently just exposed to things like the computer, the mouse pad. They were just educated in those things, and they were really excited that they would use those things. Now, let's look at the profession itself. Has it become a profession for Tom, Dick, and Harry? Or do we still have professionals? And how well has the country, given opportunity to the actual professionals to get into that parts of the economy?
Okay, well, first, I think it's quite unfortunate that the profession that is supposed to be held in lofty heights has found itself downstairs. That's quite sad, because when some of us were grown up in the 80s in Bender, the old Bender, I never heard of anything such as a private school. All of us, we all went to government schools. We all went to, either you went to St. James, or you went to St. Patrick, or you went to something Anglican primary school or Anglican secondary school. They were owned either by the government or by missionaries. So, and as at that time, standard was insisted upon. As at that time, the teachers' pay was something. But again, you also know that even from time memorial, teachers were always encouraged their duties, that their reward was in heaven. I'm sure you recall that one. So a reward that is in heaven, that is not paid back here on earth. Know that there is something of that. Even as we speak today, the rewards are still not here, because the teachers now earn basically even far less than when some of us were growing up in those days in the 80s, when we were all subjected to attend the schools that were owned by either government or by missionaries. But today that has been liberalized. The education sector has now been privatized, that you now have even, we just open maybe a two, and then before you know it is maybe social primary and secondary school, and then you have teachers who are not trained. Somebody can just say, okay, you are looking for a job, come. The person will come, the phone will come from maybe the person's village, and then you put there as a teacher. And how do you expect that quality is going to come? And if there's no quality, somebody cannot ensure to be paid well. It is the quality of your service that will attract even the payment. Look at the NNPC, look at all the one they mentioned earlier, the Central Bank. I mean, you can't just get into Central Bank without a certain level of qualification. I mean, you can't get to NNPC or even the oil industry without a minimum level of qualification. But in the teachers profession, somebody can just get from the street, and you are walking on the street, you see teachers, a vacancy for teachers, and you go and say, well, you say you are a school start holder. Okay, just come, entry point, come start, 10,000 naira per month. And the guy who has not worked before, who don't even know when the next pay will come, will be happy that he has found a job. So that's exactly the bane of the teaching profession in Nigeria today, which of course is very sad. I mean, this is not. I remember there's some headmasters which I had, which taught me principles of those days. You feared them. These were people who could stand there, who could raise their head above board, above water, and you could respect them. But today, I don't think how many headmasters are still. Most of them are school teachers, head teachers who don't even have NC. So I don't. It's quite sad that. The teaching profession has been allowed to rot. I think it is, as we speak now, whatever they want to do to give it an injection that will, bring it out of the dead, it would welcome.
All right. Now, it's interesting that you mentioned, teachers back in the day. I would recall that back in the day we had Ghanaians working in Nigeria teaching. I was taught by a Ghanaian, back in the day.
I was sorry for interrupting. Also was taught, a Ghanaian teacher taught me English language. A Ghanaian teacher taught me English language, English literature. Okay, no. A Pakistani taught me biology. A Pakistani taught me biology. A Sri Lankan taught me physics. I think Ghana taught me geography. That's how it was.
And all of that was happening here in Nigeria. Am I correct?
Mm.
Here in Nigeria. Now, where in the 80s, yes. Where did who go wrong now? Because I don't know who we should blame for this now. We had foreigners coming into Nigeria, coming into the teaching profession at that time, teaching us as children, and one would say the spoken English then was better than what we see today. So. Who really should we blame? Now, you also mentioned NCE. Not many people getting into NCE, and we know that education is becoming pretty expensive. For those that cannot afford private schooling for their children, they have to just make do with whatever they see. And even some private schools in question are exactly, nothing to write home about because they're just backyard schools. And you hear things like some of them are not registered. Some of them don't have, they're just individuals who just feel, okay, I have a good rapport with kids, so let me open a school, in front of my house and let kids come. That's what we are seeing. So who should be blamed really for this poor churn out of teachers in Nigeria?
Well, again, I'm sad to say that we tend to be heaping all the blames at the doorstep of the government. But again, I mean, rightly so. The case in point is what you just mentioned. I think if I want to trace the rock in today's education very vividly, I can trace it to the Babangida era.
Okay.
I was old enough then because I was in secondary school. As at that time, I remember that before when we were in school, you went to school, you went to primary school for 6 years. All right, and then you went to secondary school for 5 years. You knew whatever course you wanted to read. But when Babangida came in, he began to tinker with the system of education in Nigeria, which of course brought us to the new level we are in today. Now, I'm sure you recall a certain man now later, or later we will call Professor Bas Fafuwa. Professor Bas Fafuwa came up. I think he was the Minister of Education. When he came up with that 6334 system of education. All right, so you went to primary school for 6 years. Now you went to middle secondary school for 3 years, where you were supposed to learn vocation. Then you now went to the higher school, and then you now went to university. So that was where we went mad. Before then, everything was structured. If you were into sciences and you were good in the arts, you went to secondary school. If you were not too good, maybe you had some proficiency in teaching, you went to teacher's college. After that, you now graduated to the College of Education that you were able to have an NCE. Then if you were in the other side, then again, if you had a background in technical college, you went to technical college. I mean, I remember you had Urum Technical College in Benin, in Edo State, or now Edo State. You had the one in Afuze, you had the one in Benin Technical College. I mean, all these ones were all to ensure that you follow the line of technology. That's exactly how it was structured. But we went mad when they now began to tinker with basic. They say they call it that today. They call it universal basic education. What is universal about it? It's not even basic to even speak of. Now, so that's exactly where we went mad. If we had allowed the education to remain the way it was, but just tinker with the curriculum, maybe we may not have got to the solid state we are into. So, in tracing the history of the rot, I personally would trace it to the Babangida years. And then especially in respect to mention the Bas Fafuwa, who was the Minister of Education at that time.
All right, now that the House of Reps are talking about it, it may not seem like something that is achievable right now, but do you think there is a bit of hope that teachers, that sector, because they also, before you respond, the House of Reps has also reached out to the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria and told them to forward the data of unqualified teachers or quacks in the industry to forward their data so they could be sieved out. Do you think that is? I don't like that laughter.
That's also faulty. For instance, if you want us to fish out quack journalists, you don't ask the NUJ to register unqualified journalists. There's no way to do that. What you need to do is to ask the body to register or to have a list of qualified teachers. So if you have qualified teachers, you now know exactly who are not qualified. But you are asking them to start pursuing those who are not qualified. How do you get to do that? You understand? So honestly, that's also faulty. But if you look at the document that we are trying to look at, there are certain salient issues there that, of course, that are probable. For instance, you now have a teacher's academy, which, of course, if you went to school as a teacher, then you now you are required to go to that school for you to be properly certified before you can teach. But again, I think why I said this matter will be difficult to pursue is because education remains in both the exclusive, the concurrent, and the residual list of the Constitution. If it had remained in the exclusive list, the House of Rep would be able to have a matter to pursue and proceed to a electrical end. But as it is, it's just I think it's just so in the wilderness, not know exactly who to pursue and how to do it. So what they need to understand is that you can't tell the local government, for instance, to be paying teachers what the teachers under the scale under the federal government is paying them. If the teachers under Lagos State government, for instance, are earning about 70,000, you want the one in Alimosho to be able to. Alimosho government cannot pay 70,000, for instance. I mean, Alimosho, I'm just using Lagos for instance. Or let's even go to Akwa Ibom, where maybe Anambra State, where you have maybe Oyi local government or Kano local government. The teachers under Kano local government to be able to pay what the Anambra State government is paying. It's not going to work. You also expect them to. The private sector to also be paying 1,000 naira. If, for instance, that is the minimum wage. So that's why I said it's just like they just want to be seen as doing their constitutional duties. Aside from that, it's going to be an exercise in futility. But again, the teachers their pride needs to be looked upon to look at and see how we can do something to give them a good deal of life.
All right, you're sounding really, blunt, like you've made up your mind that it's an exercise in futility. But I would like to keep hope alive. I would like to have hope and believe that maybe something can be done. Now, can it be moved from the residual list and placed in the exclusive list? Is that not possible?
Well, it is. Again, I mean, it's true. We have been complaining that the exclusive list. That's why we are asking that the federal government should divorce some of this weight they are carrying all about. So it's not necessarily asking that we should take the teaching profession to the exclusive list. It can remain the way it is now, but again, you can ask the various level. The federal government, they can pay 60,000 naira. Let the state also be able to pay what they can pay. For instance, Lagos State can pay 70,000. They may not be able to pay. So allow them to pay us. No, but again, just let them pay something that is reasonable. Not just give them peanuts, just put a hand at the back of that somebody something that can be put. So I do not advocate that it should be on the exclusive. That would maybe burden or burdening, but you are burdening the federal government more. We are saying that the exclusive list should be whittled down, but the teaching profession will tantamount to asking them to get more weight.
All right then. Now let's look at this now. Let's look at a situation whereby some states, I know for sure that Lagos State took it upon itself to train some teachers that are registered with the state in state institutions. I'm privy to some of them undergoing some training as of last year. To the point where some of them were taken abroad, to see how things are done in places like Finland and in some other parts of the country, with the aim of replicating their observations here in Lagos. Yeah. Now that is Lagos State doing it for teachers under the Lagos State school system. What if other states, emulate that, and then also government now compels private institutions to also train their teachers in that regard? Don't you think that will be a way forward?
Well, I think I share that same sentiment with you. But again, if you look at the competitive structure of the states across Nigeria, you think that most of the states, while some are becoming creative, some are becoming lazy. Lazy, they just want the status quo to remain. If you recall, I always say this, that no matter how much we vilify the late head of state, General Abacha already restructured this country along it goes on. Initially, it was supposed to be a economic zone where the six zones you have today all come together. That's why most of them are culturally affine, they are economically affine. Imagine a state, a region like South, which of what they call themselves the brain states. Brace is an acronym for Bayelsa, B for Bayelsa, R for Rivers, A for Akwa Ibom, C for Cross River, E for Edo, and D for Delta. Okay, so those states were supposed to come together to share ideas. Let them see what is common among them and bring them to the table and share all these things so that you can have equal development amongst all these states over there that make the region. If you also come to the Southwest, Southwest also has what is called the Dawn Commission. Dawn is a DAWN, that stands for the Development Agenda for Western Nigeria. They were also supposed to come together and bring all this have together to the center. But what do you have? Lagos is driving on a fast lane, or you may not be driving on that same lane. When they come together, people will tell you, oh, that's a PC state. Lagos is a PC state. Oyo is a PDP state. So PDP state will not want to borrow from APC state. APC state will not want to also borrow from PDP. That's the problem. If you go up north over there, they are not also very creative. Every time you have people come cap behind the visit local government secretariat, they go back and do this, and not ever gets done. So we states are supposed to be creative, come together and borrow. They can copy and paste in their respective state. If you do well for instance, whatever, you can try to copy from that state and paste in your state. But this day nobody wants to do that because of this interstate dichotomy. Oh, PDP state is doing this, APC doesn't want to do that. They'll say, oh no, you don't want to. So except we bury all these differences in the doldrum, we will never move beyond the point where we are in now.
All right. Okay. So we do hope that maybe in this, I don't know, this might be an intention to put things in the right perspective, an intention to put things right. Don't you think that is what the House of Reps are saying? It may not be something that is achievable right now. All right. It may not be something that they can, get done with a snap of the finger. Yeah, but don't you think what the reps are doing, and what they have also asked the Teachers Registration Council to do, is a step in a right direction?
Well, in communication,
I lost you there. I can't hear you clearly anymore. In fact, I can't hear you at all.
Communication, okay. Is that exactly what is happening right now in this thing? It's a good. No doubt it's good intention. But again, what is happening is that they are not actually driving it properly. I tell you why. What I expect the House of Reps to do, rather than legislating this like as a fiat, telling all stakeholders to do it or be buried. What they need to do is to call all the stakeholders together, call those that represent the resident, call those that represent the concurrent list, and put all of them, whether it's round table, whether it's a square table, whether it's a rectangular table, whatever shape of the table, together and look at the stakeholders, have a stakeholders meeting, and look at states. How do you ensure that you pay teacher properly, and how do you ensure that standard of in the profession? Go to local government. What exactly are your peculiar challenges? When all these stakeholders have come up with that is besetting them, you can now come up with something that is workable. Across board, but not just you sit down there and expect that if you legislate something that will be practicable in Kano State, something that will be practicable in Borno State and Edo State and Delta State and the like. So I think it's like we are doing it. We are from the back door. You are bringing unitary kind of government. Now we're saying we are all a federation. Let's do things the way it should be done in our own domains. But you are saying you say the teacher in Borno should earn the same thing that Kwabo is earning. Yes, I insist that teachers should be paid well, but don't legislate it and expect what teacher is earning in Kaduna should be the same thing teacher is earning in the Ekiti State. I have a problem with that.
All right, then you. Okay. So now let's. We know that one of the reasons teachers have been doing other things aside from focusing on teaching is because of the pay. You go to schools, especially in primary schools, you see them selling things. Even in government schools, they engage in selling things, making sure that they make some little extra money. And in fact, it's so worse now for some of the pupils in those schools, because the teachers even ask them to bring certain things like toilet rolls, buckets and brooms, pay money for those things. In fact, I am privy to a particular school where students were asked to pay, I think at the time it was 200 naira every day for their teacher. No, I think it was 100 naira. 100 naira every day for their teacher for after school classes. All right. So the teacher, and when I had to go interview the teacher, and she told me in confidence that, look, that's how she gets money to transport herself from home to school and from school to home every day, because the salary is meager and it doesn't even come on time. That's another thing.
Regularly.
Yes, that's another thing.
Yes.
It doesn't come every time. What are the things that can be done to ensure that this?
I'm also privy. Sorry for interjecting. I'm also privy to information that you may not have. Maybe you may have heard about it, that a certain teacher in a certain state. I don't want to mention that state. That came to school, bought melon to school, and brought it and asked the pupils to be breaking the melon. After breaking the melon, the teacher will take the melon and then sell it. So he was using those pupils as workers there. So it happens. I mean, such situations happen everywhere. I mean, I agree with you that the teachers are poorly paid, which is why I'm saying that the House of Rep should call all the stakeholders to a table where they can discuss this peculiar nature of their challenges. It is after they've done that they will know the wahala that the teacher in Borno is facing, the challenges that the teachers in Ebonyi State is facing, the challenges that the teachers in Imo State is facing. They are not all facing the same challenge all over Nigeria. What the teacher in Lagos State may be facing may be different from the one that Akwa will be facing. Therefore, it is absurd. It is not necessary for you to say all of them should be treated equally. No, not equally, in the same way. Maybe I've checked that they could be treated equally, treated the same way. So when you look at all this, the peculiar nature of their problems, the peculiar nature of their challenges, before you can even say, okay, let's now move to step number 2. The teacher in Akwa Ibom State, your problem is maybe transportation. How can we help in order to ensure that you will sort that out? The teacher in Lagos may be housing. What can we do to ensure that we're able to bring succor to you in that aspect? It is only when you're able to do that, you now know exactly what to pay the teachers that will make them happy. But not just sit and as I kept saying, and then expect that you just bring up a policy that will just by fiat change the whole thing, and then you now say all the teachers in Nigeria should now be paid the same way, whether you are in the urban area, whether you are in the rural area, anywhere. I think for me, it's not going to work at all.
All right. Now, interesting that you mentioned housing and some other things. Haven't we had a government in place that provided some low-cost housing for teachers and members of their family as well? Have we not had that before in this country?
I have heard that. But again, when today's Nigeria, who defines what is low? Who defines what is low? And that's a relative word. What is low? What you find, what you can define as low may not be may be high. If you say low cost, for instance, it's okay that teachers are going to be paying, for instance, maybe the rent for that low cost, what you call low cost housing, is about maybe for a 3-bedroom flat. It's about 300,000 naira. Now, to a category of teachers, that may be low. Some that may be high. Now, I remember in those days when we were in secondary school, I attended the Holy Trinity Grammar School, Sabobida Ora, in today's Oma West in Edo State. We had a very, I think the school is still there. I think it's sitting on about 15 acres of land, if I'm not mistaken. So you had these teachers, you had about buildings that will house buildings. We have two bedroom flat. No, not I can't recall how many bedrooms, but a building each 2 flats. I think they had about 10 of such in those days. So where you had a family, we share this, family we share that. That's exactly how it is. And their salaries were taken, deducted. It's not very, very meager thing. They wouldn't even feel it at that time. But today in Lagos, if you ask somebody to live in Anino shop, Anino shop is a highbrow area. How much do you think the teacher will be able to pay in a 2 bedroom flat in an area? It's not very high. So what you consider a low cost in Akwa Ibom may be high, no, in Lagos State, may be high cost in Akwa Ibom. So that's why I'm saying that it's very, very important. It's of necessity for this House of Reps to call all the stakeholders together, examine where all these problems lie, and of course, with a view to looking for a solution as we look for how to support the teachers.
All right, indeed. Calling all stakeholders together, you've made that point repeatedly, and
yes,
we do hope that relevant authorities are paying attention and will do exactly that. You know, call all stakeholders and know exactly how to address the issue of poor remuneration for teachers. But let's look at the outlook now, the perception. We know that parents have their own role to play. As parents and care givers, we also have our own role to play. This is a situation whereby students these days don't want to be teachers. If you ask them, what do you want to be in future? I don't think there are many of them that would say they want to go into the teaching profession. All right. Now, we've also had issues where students go to school, teachers complain. I think right after COVID-19 or thereabouts, after the strike was called off, teachers were complaining that students come to school with vehicles, big cars, and even they had no place to park in some schools because students have, filled up the parking lot with their own cars.
Yes.
And, this perception, it also makes students see the teachers in a bad light, not respecting them, knowing that, look, whatever, you don't even have, money, I have more money, or my parents have more money. What should parents do now? Parents and...
Parents are also part of the problem. But I think the scenario you painted could only happen in private schools. I'm not sure such a thing will happen in the public school. For instance, I mean, whenever you have public schools usually sit on vast expanse of land. All right. I mean, I'm sure you can bear me witness. Or if virtually all the public schools sit on vast expanse of land, that I can tell you. So in that case, it is usually marked. You have the principal's parking lot, and it's put there. You have the vice principal via the VP's parking lot. You have a biology teacher parking lot. That's exactly how this is done in public school. But in private school, where somebody can just rent a flat, maybe a duplex to run a school, of course, you know that they won't have space. So they have space constraint. So in that case, a teacher who is teaching a child whose father or mother is a big gun in the banking industry and can afford to buy them cars, they can bring it and but in public school that indiscipline may not allow to work because there's still a measure of discipline over there in public school. So in private schools, I think private school what we have today, the indiscipline we are witnessing in the school system was caused by the private school. Private school is where you can't flog a child. In those days, if you didn't do, and your parents were even happy that you were flogged. But today, if you flog a child in a private school, you could be arrested. I once the private school where my son finished from, I was a member of the PTA. I remember the owner was complaining that time that there was even a parent that took the school to court because of saying a child did something and the child, the parents told the school that they had no right to do that, and they sued them. Though the parents they lost the case in the long run. So, but would you sue a child in a public school? No. So would you sue a teacher in the public school? If the answer is is no. So all these issues, this indiscipline, is caused by the private school, which of course must exist again for the authorities to also open their eyes and to put their foot down to say that they must do that. But again, it's also a problem of the private school. If a teacher flog a child, the proprietors will be unhappy. Oh, okay. If this one, how do you think your salaries are paid? If you begin to flog people and they are taking their children away from my school, how do you expect my school to survive? And that's also a problem. So they allow everything to go, and that's where the discipline set in. And today, it has become part of the norm in the school system.
Okay, now let's towing that line. Let's look at the rise of private schools. Why did we see a rise in private schools? There was a time, one would recall that there was a time when missionaries took over schools and there was discipline. All right, and those were the schools to go to. Those were the schools to attend. Schools that had missionaries and government. It was, some of them was a joint administration between the government and the missionaries. And those were the schools to go to. I'm going to name one, CMS Grammar School. That was a school that was highly rated. I think it's still, one of the highly rated schools, even till now. It was a school that school, I mean, I didn't go there, but we heard a lot about them. And, schools like that were highly rated because there was some sort of discipline being instilled, and government at the time paid some sort of attention to education, even though we still, our parents still complained then. Now, don't you think the rise of private schools rests on the feet of the government not paying attention to schools and allowing private investors invest in school and almost taking laws into their own hands and doing what they deem fit?
Well, I don't have a problem liberalizing or commercializing or privatizing the education system, because over time, when we began to experience population explosion, it was very obvious that the government could no longer fund education alone, which of course why they had to come up with the liberalization, or whatever nomenclature you might give it, liberalization, commercialization, or privatization, whichever one that you feel is suitable, we might give it. Now, in those days, I remember also, as I told you, I grew up in Benue State. You used to have schools like the one I to school. You had Asama College in Otuo. You had the Hossey College in Warri. You had the Dokolo Grammar School. You had Western Boys High School in Benin. So these were schools that you, apart from the Western Grammar School and then the one the Bariga Grammar School you mentioned, these are schools you could actually say yes, they have produced, even today, produce PAM secretaries, produce directors of
Exactly.
companies and all that because of the discipline. But again, if you look at today, I don't know how many permanent secretaries you have today that attend private schools. It's almost non-existent. But where you have some of these big guys are in the blue chip company that are the private sector, but not in the public sector. It's almost impossible, because the people you have in private school today, most of them were not private school had not existed in that time where you have people trained that are now in the position of permanent secretary and directors of social school. So having said that, it is not something that it's not as it's a problem for government to push a portion of it to the private sector. But when government pushed it to the private sector, government failed to regulate. They failed to insist on standard. The standard that, of course, the public school was able to attain, if they had insisted on replicating same in the private sector, perhaps the role today would have been curtailed or even eliminated, if not totally. But they just liberalized and allowed them to just go the way they wanted to go. The government was not involved in the recruitment. Government was not involved in fixing the standard. Government was not involved in any say about how these schools were run. So it just became an all-commerce affair. All you need to do is just get a building, get something to do, just spend somewhere, give your uniform, and then boom, you are a school owner. And government never regulates. And government also is not helping matter. What government does is that they go over there, they ask them to pay tenement rate, they ask them to pay social bill, they ask them to pay this revenue, they ask them to. And since these schools have to survive, they have to do everything possible to ensure they increase the number of pupils and students to have there. And as they increase them, they need to have teachers there to also teach them. And these teachers, trained teachers don't come cheap. So if they don't come cheap, then they have to also go into recruiting people who have not even finished who barely just finished secondary school, and then they get them to teach them in order to meet up with the shortfall. I think that's exactly where we got into trouble.
All right. In as much as we complain that we don't have teachers, qualified teachers, that we don't have a lot of them, we know that just last year, sometime towards the end of 2022, the UK opened its doors to teachers in Nigeria. The UK made an announcement that there was a shortage of teachers over there in the UK, and Nigerians who were willing to get into the profession could come. All right, that was thrown open, and then we saw the brain drain. Now imagine a place where they're still struggling with getting qualified teachers. Now those that are qualified are leaving for greener pastures. So that brain drain was, it took effect that time. Now,
yes,
government did something which we're still trying to argue and balance up to doctors, saying doctors should be made to, serve 5 years compulsorily before getting their license. Do you think something should be done to teachers as well, to, keep the experienced and trained ones back home in Nigeria for a period of time,
Well, it's good to exist on certain level, or maybe a modicum level of standard. Of course, we know when that news broke about doctors being subjected to working post graduation 5 years before they can be licensed or before they can be allowed to travel. It became laughable, and like the other cases, the thing dropped out of sight. Which is what I'm also saying that this one that the House of Rep has also embarked upon will also drop out of sight because it lacks the basis, it lacks the foundation for it to stand. All right. So, but again, you mentioned about brain drain, teachers going abroad, going to UK, going to Canada. The teachers who have gone there will tell you how they pass through the eye of the needle to get even a higher. Even when they get hired, there's this rule book, even in private schools over there, for them to go through. There are certain permissions, there are certain that are now permissible, there are certain they must do, there are taxes they must pay, there are certain other things they must do for them to qualify. I have a friend of mine who relocated with his family to the US. And the wife was there, was working as a nurse, auxiliary nurse, so to speak. Okay, not actually auxiliary, but a nurse. But when they got to the US, before she could work, even in private sector, she was compelled to go through some training. Even last time she spoke to my wife, said she also just went to another course again, compulsory course for her to continue practicing. So, but in Nigeria today, do you have such ways of compelling institutions to ensure they get their standards right? The answer is no, because it's an all-commerce affair. Even in the US over there, even in the UK, even though some of these things have been placed in the hands of the private sector, there's still minimum standard that you have to attain for you. Minimum standard you cannot go below for you to continue playing in that industry. But here it's not so. All right. So if you go to the UK over there, maybe the counties and local government over there, they are the ones in charge of those things. And periodically, so I learned, those authorities will visit your school randomly to check all these things, just as you had in the 80s and 70s, where you had education inspectors. They visited schools to check your. I wasn't too young enough to know in the 80s when I was in secondary school that even education board, Hollywood called education board, that education inspectors were coming. Inspector of education were coming to schools randomly to check even the way the teachers taught. They check their lesson notes. They check how they were written and all that. But today, who checks the way that the lesson notes of these teachers are written? If I can shock you that my wife is an educationist. My wife, of course, manages a school and all that. She would tell me that even she had to teach even some people how to write even lesson notes. The methodology, they don't know that, how to write lesson notes. They don't know these things. So, but in those days, you insist on some of these things. The teacher if a teacher infringes upon that, the education inspection we write something against, okay, this one requires to be taught again and all that. But how many, even in the public school today, how many of them still write a lesson note? And that lesson note that is the basis for right teaching. If you don't give right teaching, how do you structure the word well?
But is that not
them well? How do you get all this assimilation?
Is that not the job of the TRCN, that's the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria? Is that not their job? Before they register,
did we have Teacher Registration Council in the 70s, the 80s? The answer is no. But from the school where they are taught, in the teachers' training, I remember in those days in Bender State, I don't know, we had Auchi Teachers College, which was what sucked in so many people at that time in the whole of I don't know. I think we had just one teacher training college in Auchi that time, very big. Today's, but I think it became Auchi College over time. In those days, if you went to such schools, you were taught the educational methodology, you were taught teaching practice. Those ones, what they call IT today, they send them to teaching, they send them for teaching practice. When they get in there, and as they send them out, teachers will be sent. It will be sent from their schools periodically to go and look at what they are teaching. But I mean, it's not the Teachers Registration Council that taught them. As at that time, the TRCN didn't exist. But how come we're able to attain such height as at that time in level of education that we are not attained today? So it's not about the existence of the Teachers Registration Council. It's about the existence of even the school system. What are they teaching them in the NC today? What are they teaching them in teacher training college today? We have to go back to the curriculum. We have to go back to the teaching methodology that we are losing, where we are losing today. If we go over to that place, of course, I'm sure we'll be on our path again to getting it right.
All right. So now, who should ensure that things are taken back to how they used to be?
Again, you want me to sound like a broken record? Again, is the government.
The government.
The government is regulator. Government is regulator. And then what I'm saying is that we should bring back those things if it's possible, or we can even modify it where you had education inspectors. But again, today, if you bring such education inspector back, how is it possible? Will it be above board? How about a proprietor of school just arrange something for them? Okay, take this one for you and see you next time. You might have things like that. So I think the road is deeper than we are seeing it. It's not a laughing matter, but again, it's the way it is. But can we get it right? The answer is yes. But how do we get it right? Is for the authorities concerned to ensure that this standard had to be brought back.
All right. So it basically rests on the table of the government. And you've also said government should call all stakeholders together and, discuss state by state, if I get you correctly, state by state, yes, how it affects the teachers in those states, and yes, how each one can get things done that will help them do their job better. All right, because the problems inherent in one state may differ from the one in another. All right, so
exactly.
Now, for government to now do this, should we? Are we moving away from the House of Reps now? Are we now talking about state government? Can the state government individually, start by addressing this issue before we now come back to the House of Reps to say, okay, now that the issue has been addressed to a reasonable point, let's now look at increments in salaries?
Well, I think we are treating the matter from top to. It's supposed to be the right way. It's supposed to be from bottom to the top. But if the House of Rep has this function, the oversight function in that regard, why think what they ought to have done, and again what they ought to do, is to interface with the respective houses of assembly across the 36 and Abuja to say, what do you think we can do? We have this case in point where we are having teachers, the standard of teaching falling and then remuneration very poor. What do you think we can do? Then in that case, all the respective state House of Assembly, they can also set up committee that can interface with the House of Rep. So it's not taken from top to bottom. It's supposed to be from bottom to top. So when they also go to irrespective local government, 774 of them all, to look at the education districts of all these local government, and talk to councillors and say, what do you think we can do over here? So they'll now begin to collate all these papers and all these research papers and all that, submit to the state assembly. State assembly will also look at that, add to it, do a subtraction and addition. Then before they can now take it to the national body, we will now also call the state house of assembly to say, okay, bring us committees, bring us members so that can form a larger body of a committee for them to look at it before they can come up with something that is workable. So that the ones from Akwa Ibom will say this is where it's pinching us. The one from Borno will say this is where it's pinching us. So that the peculiarity of their challenges will now form the basis of how this anomaly can be addressed.
Well, I was just saying our thanks and appreciation to you, Charles Ideho, a public affairs analyst. We know that you had something else, but we had to, get you on board. And thanks for obliging us at such short notice.
And then we have to get talking to us so that we get Nigeria to work.
Of course, yes. And that's our prayer. That's our prayer. All right. Thank you for coming on the program. Well, that's it. That's it for today. That is Political Voice today. My name is Moses Humphrey. Political Voice will make a return, same time tomorrow. Bye for now.